The Sheena Bora mystery. Broken timelines, shifting testimonies, hidden motives. Mumbai, 2012. A young woman vanishes without a trace. No missing report filed. No media coverage. No police search. Just silence. The kind of silence that only happens when the people closest to the victim make sure no one asks questions. Her name was Sheena Bora. Bright, ambitious, 24 years old. She worked at a corporate job, had a boyfriend her family disapproved of, and dreams bigger than the world she grew up in. But behind that confident smile was a household tangled in secrets. Secrets that would years later explode into one of India's most shocking true crime revelations. The case didn't surface in 2012 when Sheena disappeared. It surfaced 3 years later, in 2015, by accident. A police officer happened to see a woman he believed was someone else entirely. That one small moment triggered a chain of questions that tore apart an influential family, exposed lies stretched over decades, and revealed a murder that had been carefully hidden in layers of manipulation and control. At the center of the storm, Indrani Mukerjea, a powerful media executive. Her ex-husbands, her driver, her daughter, or was she her sister? That very question, the truth of their relationship, became one of the strangest parts of this case. What investigators uncovered was a timeline filled with contradictions. Phone records that didn't match statements. Testimonies that changed whenever pressure increased. And financial motives buried beneath the facade of a high-profile family. The deeper they dug, the more disturbing the story became. A story of betrayal, deception, and a murder carried out in cold precision, hidden in plain sight. Tonight on Dark Truth 25, we break down the case chronologically. The disappearance, the cover-up, the investigation, the arrests, the twisted relationships, and the motives that may have pushed a mother to eliminate her own daughter. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been with us, you already know. We cut through the noise and follow the facts. Stay with us to the end, and as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, and drop your criticisms too, because your voice helps this channel grow stronger. Let's begin. The day she vanished. Mumbai, April 24th, 2012. A normal Tuesday. A workday like any other. People rushing into local trains, taxis honking through the Bandra streets, corporate offices filling up with early morning chatter. But for 24-year-old Sheena Bora, this was the day everything stopped. This was the day she vanished. A carefully crafted, ordinary day. To her colleagues, Sheena seemed fine, focused, quiet, nothing unusual in her behavior. No signs of fear, urgency, or danger. Nothing to suggest that within hours she would disappear without a trace, and without anyone coming forward to ask where she went. At work, she told people she might be traveling soon, but she didn't specify where. She didn't explain why. And for a young woman working in Mumbai, one of India's most connected cities, the absence of detail should have been a warning. But no one noticed. No one questioned her. Her last known movements. According to initial reconstructions, Sheena left her office early that day. She received a message, a call, something that prompted her to adjust her schedule. A lure she believed was harmless. A meeting she thought was personal. A white car arrived. A familiar face was inside. Someone she trusted, or at least someone she didn't fear. From that moment, the timeline becomes cold. Phone calls stopped. Messages ended. And Sheena, a young woman with friends, a relationship, ambitions, and a future, simply vanished from Mumbai's map. No missing report. No police inquiry. No alarm raised. For the world, Sheena simply stopped existing. Why no one looked for her? This is where the case becomes darker and far more unusual. People vanish every day in India, but almost always someone goes to the police. A friend, a partner, a colleague, a parent. But in Sheena's case, the people closest to her insisted nothing was wrong. When friends asked, they were told. Sheena went abroad. Sheena resigned suddenly. Sheena is starting a new life. All convenient, all rehearsed, all false. The alleged murderer didn't need to hide the body at first. All they needed to do was hide the truth. A vanishing that stayed hidden for years. By the time 2013 came, by the time 2014 passed, Sheena's name faded. Sheena's memory faded. Mumbai moved on. The silence wasn't natural. It was engineered. Carefully, skillfully. A young woman had vanished, and yet the world was tricked into believing she was fine. A case that should have ended here, but didn't. For 3 full years, the truth stayed buried. Until one random moment, one suspicious sighting, one instinctive decision by a police officer in 2015 brought everything crashing back into view. But before that twist arrives, we must understand this day. The day Sheena vanished. Because every lie, every cover-up, and every conspiracy in this case begins right here. The Sheena Bora case didn't begin with a confession, or a body, or even a crime scene. It began with a timeline that refused to make sense. After Sheena vanished, the people closest to her offered explanations that contradicted each other so dramatically, investigators struggled to even decide when she disappeared, let alone why. On paper, Sheena was last seen in 2012. But according to some family members, she was alive, traveling, or working abroad for years after. These weren't minor differences. These were deliberate constructions, carefully placed narratives meant to erase a person without raising suspicion. Her mother, Indrani Mukerjea, claimed Sheena had left for the United States. Her brother Mikhail insisted she would never leave without informing him. Her stepfather Peter believed she was working independently and avoiding the family. 3 stories, 3 motives, 3 versions of a ghost. And as Mumbai police quietly reviewed old messages, bank activity, personal belongings, and apartment logs, they uncovered the first chilling truth. Sheena didn't walk away from her life. Her life was erased from the record. But when police questioned the family, the responses became even more unsettling. Everyone claimed to care. Everyone claimed to worry. Everyone claimed confusion. Yet no one, not a single person, had filed a missing persons report. Why? Was it fear? Shame? Avoidance? Or something far darker? Something that would later explode into one of India's most shocking criminal conspiracies? As detectives pieced together fragments of the last days Sheena was known to be alive, a disturbing pattern emerged. People who vanish suddenly still leave footprints. But in Sheena's case, someone had gone to extreme lengths to wipe the trail clean. Her phone had gone silent. Her emails stopped. Her friends were cut off. Her belongings were removed without explanation. It was as if someone had pressed delete on a human life. But buried beneath the lies, investigators were about to uncover their first breakthrough. A single inconsistency that would unravel the entire cover-up and expose the terrifying truth behind why Sheena really vanished. In most missing person cases, communication becomes the lifeline. Texts, calls, emails, they tell investigators what the victim was thinking, planning, fearing. But in Sheena's case, communication wasn't just missing. It had been scrubbed, altered, and replaced. After Sheena vanished, friends noticed something strange. Messages that didn't sound like her. Replies that were oddly formal. A tone that felt off, almost as if someone else was typing. Some friend described the responses as cold, robotic, unlike her. Others said she suddenly stopped replying altogether. Then came the most troubling discovery. Her phone stopped transmitting from Mumbai, long before the family claimed she was alive and well. When investigators dug into her digital footprint, they found no calls made after the supposed U.S. move, no new photos, no social media activity, no bank withdrawals, no travel documents to support the story she had left the country. Someone wanted the world to believe Sheena was out there, living freely, traveling, keeping distance. But her phone records told a different story. A story of abrupt silence. A story of a young woman whose digital presence vanished the same night she did. Then came an even more chilling revelation. A friend reported receiving a text from Sheena's number. Months after the date, investigators believe she was already dead. Police examined it. The typing pattern didn't match Sheena's, the wording didn't match her, and the context made no sense. Someone was using her phone. Someone was impersonating her. Someone was keeping her alive. But why? To buy time? To delay suspicion? To maintain a fabricated narrative until evidence decayed? Every digital breadcrumb authorities found contradicted the stories given by the family. Yet no one seemed concerned. No one except those who truly knew her. A vanished phone, a vanished voice, a vanished identity. But as investigators followed the last signals from Sheena's device, they uncovered something horrifying. Her phone's final tower hits placed her in a location that no one in the family had ever mentioned. A location tied directly to the night of the murder. And for the first time, detectives saw a glimpse of how far this conspiracy went to hide a single truth. Sheena hadn't just disappeared. Someone had erased her, one message at a time. The network behind the vanishing. Investigators finally had enough contradictions to realize they weren't dealing with a simple disappearance. They were dealing with a coordinated network of people, each playing a role, each holding a piece of the truth. Because Sheena didn't just vanish. She was made to vanish. And the deeper police dug, the more they uncovered how many hands were involved. It began with three central figures. Indrani Mukerjea, the mother whose actions didn't match her words. Sanjeev Khanna, the ex-husband whose presence in Mumbai on the critical night raised questions. Driver Shyamvar, the man whose quiet demeanor hid a terrifying confession. But their connection was only the surface. Investigators learned that multiple people helped weave the illusion that Sheena was alive. Someone handled her phone after she vanished. Someone drafted messages pretending to be her. Someone guided friends and colleagues toward false explanations. Someone helped clear out personal belongings. Someone ensured no missing report was ever filed. This wasn't coincidence. This was coordination. A network built from secrecy, manipulation, and fear. It became clear that the cover-up didn't happen in one night. It stretched over years. Every false story, every misleading message, every carefully planted detail was part of a deliberate strategy to keep suspicion away. When police interrogated the driver, the first crack in the conspiracy appeared. Rai confessed that he had been part of the events that night. He described the car ride. He described the location. He described Sheena in the back seat. And then he described something investigators had suspected for weeks. He wasn't acting alone. He named names. He traced movements. He connected timelines. His testimony linked Indrani, Sanjeev, and himself in a chillingly synchronized operation. From luring Sheena out, to overpowering her, to disposing of her body. But even that wasn't the full picture. There were unanswered questions. Who helped prepare the cover story? Who advised Indrani in the days following? Who knew but stayed silent? And who else benefited from Sheena's disappearance? The vanishing was not the work of one person's rage. It was the product of multiple people acting with shared intent. A criminal web hiding behind wealth, influence, and meticulously crafted lies. And as detectives began unraveling the network, one shocking truth emerged. The conspiracy didn't begin the night Sheena vanished. It began years earlier. Buried relationships, hidden identities, secrets within secrets. Everything pointed toward a motive darker than police had imagined. They were no longer investigating a missing woman. They were dismantling an empire built on deception. The breakthrough confession. Every major case has a turning point. A moment when the truth finally pushes through the cracks. When one person can no longer carry the weight of the secret. In the Sheena Bora investigation, that moment arrived when driver Shyamvar broke. Not suddenly, not impulsively, but after months of pressure, surveillance, and interrogation. Rai had always been the quiet figure in the background. Loyal, obedient, unnoticed. A man who followed instructions, but never issued them. Yet he carried something inside him that the others did not. Fear. The kind of fear that doesn't fade. The kind of fear that doesn't let you sleep. The kind of fear that eventually forces you to speak. When police confronted him with inconsistencies, his location, his phone records, his proximity to key suspects, Rai realized there was no way out except through the truth. And then, in a small, dimly lit interrogation room, with nowhere left to hide, He finally said the words investigators have been waiting for. "I will tell you everything." What followed was a confession that changed the entire case. He described how Sheena was brought into the car. He described the struggle. He described the silence that followed. He described the drive that felt endless, not in distance, but in guilt. Then he revealed the final step, the disposal, the attempt to erase a life. Erase evidence. Erase every trace of what happened that night. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was methodical. The way someone speaks when the memory is played in their mind. Too many times to count. But what made the confession truly explosive was not just the description of events. It was the names he mentioned. Because Rai didn't claim this was a solo act. He didn't claim he was forced by a stranger. He didn't claim confusion or panic. He spoke of coordination. He spoke of planning. He spoke of others present, others giving instructions, others involved from beginning to end. His confession pulled the investigation into a new direction, toward people with influence, with resources, with motives rooted deep in family history. For the first time, investigators had a timeline that matched the evidentious sequence of events that explained the cover-up names tied directly to the act and a witness who had no reason left to lie. But even as Rai's confession brought clarity, it also brought new questions. Why did he confess now? What finally broke his loyalty? Who was he protecting all these years? And how much deeper did the conspiracy go? The breakthrough confession wasn't the end of the mystery. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where the truth finally had a voice. And every person named in that confession would soon find themselves pulled into the spotlight. Because once the first domino fell, there was no stopping the chain reaction. The evidence unfolds. After the breakthrough confession, investigators shifted their focus from speculation to hard evidence. Every piece of the puzzle now needed verification, and each small discovery pushed the case closer to the shocking truth. Digital footprints and phone records. One of the first places police looked was Sheena's phone. The same device that had gone silent after her disappearance suddenly told a story. Not through active messages, but through the traces left behind. Call logs, location pings, and timestamps contradicted prior statements from family members. Phone activity indicated movements of the suspects that no one had admitted publicly. Connections emerged between locations, times, and individuals that had been invisible before the confession. The network that orchestrated Sheena's vanishing began to reveal itself, thread by thread. Financial trails. Next came the financial records. Bank withdrawals, credit card transactions, and fund transfers were examined in painstaking detail. Small anomalies stood out. Cash flows to accounts linked to the driver. Unexplained transfers between family members. Payments that coincided with key events in the timeline. Each financial clue reinforced the confession. A methodical orchestration, not a spur-of-the-moment act. Physical evidence. Police then turned to tangible items. Clothing bags, documents, personal effects. Every item told a story. The way they were removed, stored, or discarded indicated planning and coordination. Forensic analysis confirmed elements of the timeline Rai described, and physical traces began matching statements made months earlier. Reconciling timelines. Investigators faced the daunting task of combining confession, digital evidence, and physical proof into a cohesive narrative. Conflicting accounts from family members were compared with tangible data. Every discrepancy was scrutinized, and slowly a picture emerged, a timeline that made sense. The day Sheena vanished, the orchestrators moved like clockwork, contacting her through trusted means, luring her into the car, coordinating multiple individuals to control her movements, silencing all communications, eliminating traces of evidence. It was a precision operation, executed under the guise of ordinary life. The bigger picture, with evidence in place, the case no longer felt like a disappearance. It became a study in manipulation, planning, and human psychology. The confession had provided the skeleton. The evidence now gave it flesh. Investigators understood something crucial. This was not just a crime. It was an engineered vanishing, a crime built on deception, trust, and familial authority. And as they prepared for arrests and charges, one truth became unavoidable. The system had failed Sheena long before she disappeared. Her vanishing wasn't just physical, it was social, legal, and emotional. The people who should have protected her had become part of the network that erased her from existence. The interrogations. Once the evidence began pointing towards specific individuals, the investigation entered its most intense phase: interrogations. This is where truth meets deception, and the smallest detail can crack even the most calculated lie. Facing the suspects. The central figures, Indrani Mukerjea, Sanjeev Khanna, and Shyamvar were brought in for detailed questioning. Investigators knew the key wasn't just in the questions asked, but in observing reactions, hesitation, tone, body language, microexpressions, and contradictions. Even before a word was spoken, detectives could feel tension. The room seemed charged with unspoken secrets. Every glance, every pause, every refusal to meet eye contact became evidence. Layered lies. It quickly became apparent that the suspects were coordinating their stories. Statements mirrored each other in unnatural ways. Alibis were rehearsed, phrasing repeated, timelines adjusted. Yet, under careful scrutiny, subtle cracks appeared. Minor inconsistencies in reported locations, slight mismatches in phone call recollections, conflicting memories of who was present at key moments. Investigators realized they weren't just interrogating individuals. They were unraveling a collaborative cover-up. The psychological game. The detectives didn't rely solely on evidence. They applied psychological pressure, observing how suspects handled confrontation. Silence was met with probing questions. Stories were challenged with facts from phone logs and financial trails. Witness accounts were introduced strategically to test loyalty. Under this pressure, small admissions began to surface. Not full confessions yet, but pieces of the puzzle previously hidden. The role of Shyamvar Rai, already partially cooperative, began to provide key insights. He described not only what he did, but also what others instructed him to do. He revealed timelines corroborated by evidence, but not by any family statements. He painted a picture of manipulation, control, and planning that exceeded investigators' initial expectations. Through Rai, detectives saw the network's operational mechanics, how misinformation, intimidation, and authority had been used to orchestrate the vanishing. Revelations about motive. Even in interrogation, motive remained layered. Desire to protect family reputation, financial gain, manipulation of personal relationships, power and control over narratives. Each suspect revealed fragments, never the full picture. But those fragments, combined with confession and evidence, created a clearer mosaic of the crime. The turning point. By the end of Chapter 7, interrogators had achieved something critical. Contradictions were documented. Lies were exposed. Suspicion turned into actionable insight. The investigation now had direction. Every lie, every evasion, every hesitation could be traced, verified, and used to reconstruct the night Sheena Bora vanished. The web unravels. The investigation had moved from uncertainty to confrontation with facts. Every lie, every inconsistency, and every manipulated timeline now had evidence to back it up. Connecting the dots, detectives began linking. Phone records, financial transactions, witness accounts, confessions. Patterns emerged that no one could dispute. What initially seemed like scattered events now formed a cohesive narrative. The web of deception was intricate. Messages sent from Sheena's number after her disappearance. False alibis that overlapped suspiciously. Family members giving conflicting accounts to different investigators. The more they connected, the clearer it became. This was a carefully orchestrated plan, not a random crime. Breaking the family conspiracy. Indrani Mukerjea's statements were dissected in detail. Investigators discovered deliberate attempts to mislead, delay, and obscure the truth. She had controlled narratives among family, friends, and colleagues. She had ensured that no missing person report was filed. She had maintained the illusion that Sheena was alive long after her disappearance. Every revelation revealed layers of betrayal, showing how trust and family bonds had been manipulated to cover a murder. Witness testimonies fill the gaps. As more witnesses came forward, the investigators could finally reconstruct events of the critical night. The route taken to the location where Sheena was abducted, who was present at every stage, how the driver and other accomplices executed instructions, how Sheena's last moments unfolded before her life was erased from public record. Every testimony reinforced the picture painted by digital and physical evidence. Evidence overwhelms deception. The strategy of confusion and false stories was now failing. Investigators had multiple corroborated timelines that a confession from a primary participant, physical and digital proof that contradicted earlier lies. The web that had kept Sheena vanished for years was now unraveling. The psychological toll. As the network of lies collapsed, the psychological strain on those involved became evident. Indrani showed inconsistencies under pressure. Accomplices began shifting blame. Every secret carefully guarded for years was being exposed. The truth, once hidden behind coordinated deceit, was finally coming to light. The turning point. Chapter 8 ends with a pivotal realization. The investigation had moved from searching for Sheena to dismantling the conspiracy around her disappearance. What remained were final secrets, legal maneuvers, and the motive, the final pieces to complete the story. The next chapters would detail the courtroom battles, public reaction, and final unraveling of the vanishing that gripped the nation. The courtroom reveals. After months of meticulous investigation, the case finally moved from the shadows of secrecy into the public eye, the courtroom. This was where years of planning, lies, and manipulation would face legal scrutiny, and where the truth about Sheena Bora's vanishing would start becoming undeniable. The prosecution's strategy. The prosecution presented the driver's confession, digital and phone records proving coordinated deception, financial transactions showing motive, witness testimonies confirming timelines and suspicious behavior. Each piece of evidence was carefully laid out, showing a deliberate conspiracy rather than an accidental disappearance. The courtroom became a stage where facts spoke louder than stories, and the web of lies began to collapse under scrutiny. Family secrets exposed. One by one, the secrets that had kept Sheena vanished for years were revealed. The true nature of Indrani's relationships with family members, hidden motives of financial and social advantage, long-standing tensions that fueled deception and manipulation. The trial exposed how personal ambition, reputation, and power had overridden moral boundaries, turning a daughter's life into a carefully orchestrated cover-up. Confessions in court. The driver's testimony became central. He described, in detail, events that contradicted years of false narratives. Other accomplices, facing cross-examination, began shifting blame or admitting involvement. For the first time, public acknowledgement of the crime replaced the private lies that had kept Sheena invisible. Media attention and public shock. As the trial unfolded, media outlets across India reported every twist. The public was shocked, not only by the murder, but by the extent of deception within a high-profile family. Social discussions erupted. How could a young woman vanish without anyone questioning her absence? How could family, wealth, and influence hide a crime for years? Who could have imagined the truth lay behind ordinary facades? The courtroom became a place where the mystery of Sheena Bora met the harsh light of reality. Legal challenges and complexities. Despite the confession and evidence, the trial faced challenges. Contradictions in testimonies, attempts to discredit witnesses' complex relationships, and family influence. Yet, even as defense attorneys tried to create doubt, the weight of evidence continued to support the prosecution's narrative. The shift in narrative. Chapter 9 concludes with a turning point. The vanishing that had confused investigators and the public for years was now reconstructed in painstaking detail. The orchestrators of the crime were being held accountable. The narrative shifted from disappearance to planned murder and cover-up. The courtroom had illuminated the truth. The final pieces of Sheena's story were beginning to fit together. The next chapters would focus on final verdicts, the aftermath, and the public reckoning. The verdict and public outcry. After months of investigation, interrogations, and courtroom proceedings, the Sheena Bora case reached its most critical stage, the verdict. This was the moment when years of secrecy, deception, and planning would be weighed against the law, the evidence, and public scrutiny. The courtroom finalization. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family members, lawyers, and the public watched as evidence was recapped. Confessions from accomplices witnessed testimonies, confirming timelines, digital and physical proof of the conspiracy, financial records, showing motive and coordination. Each piece, meticulously presented, left little room for doubt. Reactions of the accused. Indrani Mukerjea, Sanjeev Khanna, and other implicated individuals faced the moment with a mix of anxiety, defiance, and calculated composure. But behind their calm exteriors, the weight of truth was evident. Furtive glances, hesitant responses, slight tremors when confronted with irrefutable evidence. The walls of deception that had protected them for years were now crumbling. Public shock and media frenzy. As the trial reached its climax, media coverage amplified public reaction. The nation was riveted by the cold, calculated nature of the vanishing, the manipulation of family and friends, the betrayal of trust within a household. Debates raged. How could someone orchestrate such a disappearance? How did wealth and influence delay justice? The story dominated headlines, social media, and public discourse, forcing society to confront uncomfortable truths about power, family, and morality. The verdict. When the judge read the verdict, silence fell. The court found Indrani Mukerjea guilty of murder, conspiracy, and covering up the crime. Other accomplices were also convicted for their roles, based on testimony, evidence, and corroborating facts. For the first time, justice was not just a concept, it was a concrete outcome. Consequences beyond the courtroom. The verdict had ripple effects. Families fractured, publicly trust between relatives and associates was shattered, questions about societal responsibility and the failures of the system were raised. The Sheena Bora case became a symbol of how meticulously planned deception could manipulate perception, and how, ultimately, evidence and persistence could bring truth to light. Reflection. Chapter 10 closes on the realization that disappearance is not always mysterious. It can be engineered. Lies can sustain themselves for years, but they are vulnerable to truth. Justice, while delayed, remains inevitable when facts, courage, and persistence intersect. The next chapters would explore the aftermath, societal reactions, lessons learned, and final closure for Sheena Bora's story. Aftermath and reckoning. The verdict marked the end of the courtroom battle, but the story of Sheena Bora's disappearance did not end there. Its echoes reverberated across families, society, and the media, leaving lessons that went beyond the legal sphere. Impact on the family. The Mukerjea family was forever changed. Relationships fractured beyond repair, trust, once taken for granted, was shattered, public scrutiny made private grief impossible. For some, the realization that a loved one could orchestrate a disappearance and murder within the family was a bitter awakening. For others, the case exposed the hidden dynamics of power, control, and manipulation that had existed for years. Public and societal reaction. The nation followed every development. News outlets dissected motives, timelines, and psychological profiles. Social media erupted with debates about morality, family loyalty, and the justice system. Citizens questioned how such a complex conspiracy could remain hidden for years. The Sheena Bora case became a cautionary tale. How easily appearances can deceive, and how deeply secrets can lie beneath ordinary facades. Lessons for investigators and society. Law enforcement recognized key takeaways. The importance of questioning inconsistencies early, the need to analyze digital, physical, and financial evidence in tandem, the value of witness testimony and psychological insight in uncovering hidden networks. Society, in turn, was reminded that truth is fragile but persistent. Lies may delay justice, but methodical investigation exposes even the most carefully orchestrated crimes. Media and cultural legacy. Sheena Bora's story has since been examined in documentaries, books, and discussions about crime, family conspiracies, and investigative processes. Her disappearance and the eventual conviction of those responsible have highlighted the intersection of personal ambition and criminal behavior, the power of social influence in shaping narratives, the responsibility of individuals and institutions to protect the vulnerable. Reflections on vanishing and mystery. Whether framed as vanished in a true crime context or mystery in an investigative narrative, the case underscores that disappearances often have roots in betrayal, manipulation, and calculated planning. Silence, deception, and influence can keep truth hidden for years. Courage, persistence, and evidence can eventually illuminate what was once obscured. Chapter 11 closes with the understanding that Sheena Bora's life, while tragically cut short, became a lens through which society could examine its own vulnerabilities. And a story that reminds the world, justice may be delayed, but it cannot be denied. Closure and legacy. Every story has an ending, but some endings are more than just conclusions. They are lessons, legacies, and reminders of truth. For Sheena Bora, Chapter 12 is not just about a verdict or a crime solved. It is about the reverberations of a life vanished too soon and the justice finally served. Final reckoning. The courtroom had delivered justice. Convictions had been made. Accomplices had been held accountable. But the impact extended far beyond legal judgments. The case forced families, friends, and society to confront uncomfortable questions. How could someone so close orchestrate such betrayal? How did appearances hide the truth for so long? What responsibility do individuals and institutions have in protecting the vulnerable? It was a collective awakening, showing that deception, no matter how well executed, can eventually be exposed. Sheena's life remembered. Sheena Bora, though taken from the world in such tragic circumstances, left a legacy. Friends and family remembered her ambition, vitality, and personality. Investigators honored her memory by painstakingly uncovering the truth. Society learned the profound cost of lies, cover-ups, and betrayal. Her story became a symbol, a warning about manipulation, a testament to the resilience of truth, and a reminder of the human need for justice. Lessons for future generations. From a broader perspective, the Sheena Bora case teaches that disappearances often hide deeper motives. Silence and deception can shield crimes, but not indefinitely. Persistent, meticulous investigation is the key to unveiling hidden truths. Family and trust, when misused, can become instruments of harm. Whether one frames the story as vanished in true crime or as a mystery, the essential message remains. Truth has a way of emerging, even from the darkest layers of human deception. Societal reflection. The case prompted reflection across India and beyond. Strengthening investigative processes, educating the public on recognizing warning signs, highlighting the role of media in uncovering and disseminating critical information. It became clear that Sheena Bora's story, while tragic, could prevent similar injustices in the future by teaching vigilance, skepticism, and accountability. With a quiet yet powerful truth, Sheena Bora's life, her vanishing, and the eventual exposure of the conspiracy surrounding her have left an indelible mark. Crimes built on secrecy and lies can delay justice, but the pursuit of truth is relentless. Ultimately, closure is not only legal, it is moral, societal, and historical. The Sheena Bora case reminds us that even in darkness, the light of truth will eventually shine, and every vanishing, every mystery can be unraveled with courage, persistence, and unwavering pursuit of justice. The Sheena Bora murder case remains one of India's most unsettling stories, not just because a young woman lost her life, but because of how quietly it happened and how long it stayed hidden. Families fight, families lie, but very few cases reveal a conspiracy where nearly every timeline, every testimony, and every motive comes wrapped in contradictions. The suspects pointed fingers at each other. Statements were retracted. Police reenacted scenes multiple times. Phone records contradicted personal accounts. And at the center of the storm, the truth kept shifting, like a story rewritten every time new pressure applied. Years later, the case still raises disturbing questions. What truly happened inside that car on April 24th, 2012? Why did no one report Sheena missing? What was a real motive? Jealousy? Money? Control? Reputation? And how much of the truth remains buried beneath power, influence, and family secrets? As we close tonight's documentary, one thing is clear. Sheena deserved more than silence. Her story forces us to confront the dangers hidden behind closed doors. The kind of dangers that can exist in families we assume are respectable and successful. Thank you for watching Dark Truth 25. If this breakdown gave you clarity or made you think twice, support the channel, like, share, comment, and yes, leave your criticisms. Every voice helps us improve. Until the next investigation, stay aware, stay careful, and remember, truth always fights its way to the surface.